All right, everybody, it's showtime.
It's showtime.
It's showtime.
It's showtime.
It's showtime!
Now take your position. It's showtime.
Hey, heads up, everybody! It's showtime!
Oh, it's time!
This is the Stand and Deliver Comedy Podcast with Rhodders.
Stand and Deliver!
Hello and welcome to the Stand and Deliver Comedy Club podcast. It's episode 1. I'm mega excited about this. Podcasting was relatively new when I first did it, and now it's almost old hat, so it seems like the right time to start again. Let me start by briefly introducing myself. My name is Rhodders. I'm a stand-up comedian and I'm also the promoter of the Stand and Deliver Comedy Club. We run a monthly stand-up show up above Smoking Billy's Rib House in the centre of Reading Town. For more info and to buy tickets, head to facebook.com/Stand and Deliver Comedy Night. So what is this podcast all about and who is it for? Anybody who's into stand-up comedy, who wants to see a little peek behind the curtain inside the lives and minds of stand-up comedians from around the world. It's basically going to be me, one-on-one, chatting to some of the great acts we've had pass through the doors of the comedy club, and also we'll be chatting to some of the acts that I meet along the way whilst I'm gigging around the country. My guest for this episode is a real force to be reckoned with, Iszi Lawrence. On a Saturday night, you'll probably find her in one of the big room clubs, taking on a hen do or stag do, and generally winning. Although when she's not taming Saturday night crowds, she has a more intellectual side to her. She can be found at the British Museum doing shows about history, doing comedic tours of art galleries, or hosting her very own history-related podcast, The Z List Dead List. When I caught up with Iszi, it was at a bar at the University of Reading while she was waiting for her jiu-jitsu lesson to start. So I was very careful what I said. I didn't want to be jiu-jitsu chopped in the nose or whatever painful things they do to each other. We ended up talking for so long, I've decided to cut this interview into 2. In this half, we talk about comedy as a conversation, the psychology of a room and why certain people sit in the front while others flee to the back, and how Iszi takes down hecklers.
The Stand and Deliver Comedy Podcast.
It's the Stand and Deliver Comedy Podcast, and I'm joined with Iszi Lawrence, who has done comedy for yonks and yonks and has performed at my club. You were the second ever person to host the Stand and Deliver Comedy Club in your own hometown of Reading, so it wasn't even a commute, was it?
No, I think you might have got me out of the bath to do it. I think you rang me because I think somebody else pulled out on you last minute and you went, Iszi, which is usually how I get gigs in Reading.
I think the second time you were meant to turn up and you were booked to MC, but there was a night where we had a certain comic who had a mishap, and I got an email off their agent during the first break, and I was going through the phone book going, oh God, who can we get? And I rang you and you were like, oh, all right, I will. Well, and I think you were coming back from opening at a club in London, I think.
I'd opened at a club in London earlier that evening, so it was one of these pre-dinner conference type gigs, which are horrible if you've ever done them. And so it's like, oh great, I could be home by 9 o'clock, and I get home and I start running my bath, and then you message me. So I have to get up again and go out and be funny.
Not having done the whole being funny thing for as long as you, I find it takes me a while to get my head in gear for it, and I like to arrive early, and I like to suss out the room, and I don't like to rush or panic. So if I get a last minute gig, I'm very grateful, but also part of me thinks, oh God, I can't deal with this. But does it not bother you?
No, I find being in the moment is the key. So if you turn up early and you sit through the show, you've got a better idea of what the audience is expecting or what the audience kind of wants at that point. If you've had an MC who's done a lot of material, they're likely to want a lot of interaction. If you've had, if they've been reacting loads to very witty jokes, then that's kind of probably what they want. They don't particularly want, your more sort of rude stuff. And if they've only been laughing at rude stuff, they want rude stuff. And that is basically the majority of audiences.
So if in doubt, go blue.
Kinda. It's depressing, but yeah, it works. I mean, basically you have to think what people are doing. They're going out on Friday or Saturday night, and they just want to be taken out themselves. They don't want to think too hard. They just want a bit of entertainment. Something to talk about maybe on the way home, a little bit of that, but nothing, they just want to giggle and have a good time.
No, it's true. You can overanalyze comedy when, after all, it is something people do because they don't want to be at home and they want to have a bit of fun, as philosophical as you can be about it. It is just... and that doesn't make it any less valuable, but there is a big argument for not taking it too seriously because it is just someone's distraction.
Yeah, I mean, we're ultimately beer salesmen.
Yeah.
If you've ever done gigs in restaurants and stuff, or gigs where it's comedy in a comedy night, you're basically there between appetizer and main event. That is all you are. You're a traffic cone of the evening. You just are there to sort of fill in while they do their own thing.
I did a gig recently. Tickets were £10, and that included 2 drinks. And I think £4 to £5 is the average price of a drink in London. So what are they valuing the comedians at? It's drinks first, comics second, unfortunately.
Well, if you remember a certain chain which has gone bust now, it was what was it? It was eat, dance, drink, laugh, and laugh is the last thing that you do at that. But you know,
fall over, I think, and be sick.
I mean, we're both comedy nerds, so we will go out of our way, sit at the back of an uncomfortable room to watch a comic we absolutely adore. That's a very rare thing. Most people now consume their comedy online in terms of they'll just go scour YouTube for their favourite comics, watch their, hours on Netflix and the rest of it. They won't tend to go out their way to watch them. And the people who turn up at comedy clubs are not comedy fans. They're just people going, what should we do for date night?
Yeah.
So it's there was a time where you would go, comedy clubs are filled with comedy nerds. That isn't the case so much. There are a few, don't get me wrong, comedy nerds. There are a few clubs which are full of nerds, but that isn't how you earn your crust.
That's not the big Saturday night gig, is it? I remember at my club, I guess you must have just walked in, read the room, and done it, because it's a small room. You've done it before, you know the Reading audience, so it probably didn't matter that you turned up last minute. I remember I went on, I padded for time, I did 15 minutes, and I saw a shock of blonde hair at the back of the room. I thought, oh good, Izzy's here, I'll get off.
Yeah, it's a fun little gig, yours. It's very intimate. The back of the room feels like the front of the room. The front of the room looks terrified, which is always good, because I can deal with terror. Nervous laughter counts. I found that if the front row is laughing nervously, the second row and the back row will go, oh, they're laughing, it must be funny, I will laugh too.
People still worry at my club about sitting at the front, and I think, really, what is the difference between sitting at the front and the back? It's all about 4 meters, but I guess they feel more exposed.
Yeah, you do feel more exposed at the front, particularly if there's no tables and stuff in front of you. It's physically an intimate thing to do, be right. And also, I could turn at any moment. I could start beating them up. They don't seem to realise that. But the psychology of a room is quite interesting. So if you place yourself at the front of the room, you're basically going, somebody pick on me. So you've got that. It also shows a level of confidence and a level of, so you're fair game for the comedian. That's a sort of like standardised rule. And it's, it's like sitting at the front of the class. You're the teacher's pet, Cool kids go to the back of the bus. They don't sit at the front with the teachers and the nerds. So all that is, ultimately what you want, if you're a comedy audience, is to basically be as inconspicuous as possible, not to be reminded that you are anything other than a member of a crowd. Because the moment you're psychologically think that you're an individual, psychologically think you are an individual, you go, oh my god, I'm in a room full of people, and if I laugh at the wrong bit, they're going to think I'm an idiot. And then it becomes about them, not about the night. I do,
as much as a promoter, I sit the audience members, and I'm always the one trying to persuade people to sit at the right front and all that lot. But as an audience member myself, I prefer to be third row, because I'm close enough to the action, but not too close. And in Edinburgh, I went to see a comedian and ended up in the front row because I was late, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be awful. And yeah, he did talk to me, but it wasn't that bad. He was nice about it, and it was because I think I was wearing a Mutant Turtles t-shirt, and I thought, oh, well, I'm for it. This is going to be a terrible 2 hours. But it was fun, and he was all, it was good, because he took the mick, but he didn't go too far, and it was he was taking the mick out of me, but in a way that I felt kind of included with it. I wanted to stay for the next half rather than walk out crying. And I think sometimes that's the balance a good compere or even a good act doing crowd work needs to find that line.
Yeah, I think it's basically the way that you're going to attract a comedian's attention is if you're not laughing, your arms are crossed, and you look angry. Because that's all we see. So if you want to not get picked on, you smile, you giggle, you laugh at all the jokes, you answer questions quickly, and don't think about it too much, don't try and be clever, and you'll be fine.
Don't give a false name, because we can smell that. If Dave says he's called Robert, we know that, we just know it's not his name.
Well, mainly because all of his friends go, what are you talking about, Dave? Your name's not Robert, it's Dave, isn't it, Dave? And then, but I mean, there are rooms where I have to deal with a table or a heckler before they've even started, because I've seen what's happened to previous acts when they haven't acknowledged them. So you just go on and you deal with them immediately, even before they've had a go at you. Just simply because, and it's usually because they're drunk and talky, if they're women, and they're angry and cross-armed and shouty and blokey if they're blokes. And usually a group of blokes with, my feminine charms and accent can be a problem. However, not so much because I just go in twice as hard on them.
I've never seen you had to deal with a really terrible heckler. Do you tend to go, because I just think do you go straight in? You can't go straight in for the juggler, can you? Do you give them a chance, or then do you just... Or does it depend on I guess it depends on the heckler. Because if you shout at them too much, then you look like the maniac.
I think that is something a male comedian has more difficulty with than a female comic. I can have a go at a woman and not appear overly... There's something different about a female comic having a go at a woman in the audience and a male comic doing it. And I think men fear hen nights more than I fear stag do's. Because hen nights... If you tell women to shut up and stop having a good time, not good. If I do it, I can do it in a playful way, and because I am quite androgynous in some senses, and while I am absolutely devastating attractive, don't get me wrong, it is a case that I am not what most women think of as, I wish I looked like her. The way you deal with women is you go, look at these proper heterosexual women, look at them with their perfect makeup, etc., etc. And they like that because I'm basically calling them alphas.
So you're giving them a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, I basically go in with compliments and then I degrade them. With men, if they're in a group, I tend to pick on the weakest, because that's the easiest one, the nerdy.
Fair enough.
The one who is the runt of the litter, and then immediately from that I know who the alpha is, and then I go for him. And when that happens, they all love me, including him. So there's that, there's that dynamic of it, and I have to go in hard. And so I do have some lines so for example, if there's a builder's, table all together who are obviously disappointed when they see me, which happens, because I am, as I say, not what they'd call a pin-up and also not what they wanted in terms of comedy. I think my go-to line is, you don't look like you've listened to a woman for this long without either fucking or punching her. That, you see, the audience like it, because the audience go, you don't look like you've listened to a woman for this long without either fucking or punching her, because you are dicks. But they think, yeah, that's right, I'm an alpha male. And they like that. So everybody laughs at it, because they all acknowledge what a funny thing it is. And I usually get them on side. And if I don't get them on side, I literally apologise. I say, you don't understand this, guys. These guys want a night out. And, I am the wrong booking. I am the wrong booking. And I acknowledge it, because if you acknowledge it, you basically start a conversation with them, and they don't take it out on you, because there's nothing I can do to make myself the actor.
Yeah, because they can't. You have to be defensive in order for someone to have a fight with you, I believe.
But by sort of going, you're going to hate this, we're going to talk about women's issues type, let's do a little bit of feminism, or cats, which is it, boys? There's going to be, you can make a joke out of it, and you can make a joke out of the fact that you acknowledge. But you do it without apologising. You don't go, I wish I was this act that you wanted to see. You just go, shit night for us. Let's make a bad situation worse. It's like when you have to support something. Like I've had to support Stewart Lee, I've had to support Alan Davies, and you just walk on stage with no introduction when the audience is expecting Alan Davies, and you get Iszi for 20 minutes when you didn't know that was happening. Therefore, they're angry, and I go, I'm angry too. The only reason I took this booking was to watch Alan Davies.
People should know by now that there is a support act, and that it's part of getting a bit of value for money. Like I'd never be annoyed with more entertainment rather than less. Like even if I'm seeing a comedian I really like, it's not. I guess, but we're comedy people, so I guess
exactly. They don't see it that way. They see, well, I know the show goes from 8 until 10.
You're delaying it.
No, it's not even you're delaying it. You're taking up time that Alan Davis would have been speaking.
It doesn't work like that. He doesn't want to write an extra half hour. He's got, I don't know, dishes to wash or whatever. I don't know what he does in his free time. It's none of my business. But I was, for a time, I stopped doing it. I was very aggressive with hecklers, and it never worked, because I don't think it looked right with me. And also, it would scare the people who were nice and who were on my side at the start of the gig, because they thought I would turn on them.
I think it's probably more to do with the fact that you were doing rehearsed lines of them. I think people sense that, and I think they go, oh, he's not in the room here with us, let's not engage either. Because it doesn't look like you're engaging, so they're not going to invest in you. If you walk on stage and just go, I am here, are you here? They go, yeah, we're here, what? You know, it is about breaking that fourth wall. And the more you have rehearsed lines, the more you have to going, I have to do this joke and I have to get this rhythm right and it has to be perfect. No matter what else happens. If there's a fire in the room and that starts mid-joke, I'm finishing my joke, it comes across as false and it will always fail. And I do think stand-up comedy done best is where you have the lines and you have the beauty and you have the routine, but you can stretch it, you can manipulate it, and you have to literally look at the room in front of you and go, I'm going to tell this to you guys.
It's like having an arsenal and picking what to use from it, I guess, rather than following your list of, oh, well, I'll use a spanner here and a shotgun here, and then I guess.
Well, it's more to do with the fact that you've got your toolkits, so you've got your spanner toolkit, and you've got your shotgun toolkit, and you've got your surgical thing. So when there's somebody lying in front of you...
Yeah, that's a better analogy, yeah.
Who needs stitches, you don't get your shotgun out.
No.
There's a bear in front of you, you don't just go, oh, I know what you need, a spanner. No.
Well, that's how you got kicked out of med school. I also found that I'm very customer service with hecklers. I'll just treat it like they're being reasonable, and I'll kind of very kindly and nicely answer the question. I'll be rude if it's like a very last resort. Like one of I got threatened by some bloke who would have been having a bit of an argy-bargy with, and he asked for my address, which was code for I'm going to find you and beat you up. So I'd give him my email address and be like helpful but misleading. So I was told by someone that, I think it was Lucas told me this, you can't, if you bark at a dog, it will only bark back. So if I'm nice and he's yelling at me, then he looks like the maniac. So it kind of, and also it kept me from doing pre-prepared lines. But I find that if I'm nicer to hecklers, I remain in more control than when I was doing stock put downs.
I think, yeah, that is because you're thinking about what they're saying. So they're going to respond better to that than just go, shut up, oh yeah, fuck your dad or something. There's no, it is, all we're doing is speaking to a room full of people.
They used to take heckling the wrong way, because sometimes they do want the act to fail, but quite often they're drunk, or they're joining in, or they're just showing off to their mate. Very rarely do I think an audience member enters a comedy night with, right, I'm going to ruin this for that comedian who spent all this time writing that bit of work. I don't think that's really, and when you start from a perspective of they're probably not doing this to upset me personally, then I don't mind it so much. I mean, it's not ideal. I mean, I'd never heckle Phantom of the Opera. And, I'd never go, well, Alfie Bow, get your whatever out, or whatever. I'm not a very good heckler. But I wouldn't yell abuse at Alfie Bow whilst he was doing a musical. So I'd never yell at a comic unless invited to.
Best heckle I heard, I was doing a gig in Cardiff. Do you know a guy called Ted? Guy's got CP, cerebral palsy, and he's a comic. He's good. But he's very cerebral palsy. He uses a scooter to get about, that sort of thing. And he really funny when you can hear him. He suffers really badly if the microphone and the sound's not good, because the audience doesn't get him, and he's proper good. But we were on a bill together, and there's a middle spot who was doing a very right-wing style act. talking about how great he was and how rubbish, single mums were, etc. This wasn't going down in quite a socialist city, which is Cardiff. It's not going down well. So he was being unpleasant, and he was doing that thing where comedians are dying. They're trying to engage the audience. They're going, my next, gag is about a car. So anybody here got a car? If you got a car, it's a good car, like this sort of thing.
But no one answers that, because if they do have a car, they're not going to, they'll be like, well, yeah, of course I have a car.
Well, exactly. So nobody did answer that, apart from Ted. From right at the back of the room, just went, mobility scooter! And he never recovered from that. That was a very...
It's just bizarre, isn't it? Because it's not even aggressive.
It wasn't aggressive, but it just said... I think it was the Heckler equivalent of check your privilege without, actually saying it. It was understood by the audience what a dick this guy was just by that heckle. But yeah... I think heckles can be very aggressive. I've had horrible ones. I've had groups of men follow me into a car park after a gig, even after pretending to say... Well, pretending. Even after they've literally threatened to rape me, which is not what you want, right, to get a comedian off stage. Because I'm just like, well, if you are going to rape me, I'm going to have witnesses. I'm staying up here.
It's just ludicrous. It's like... I don't know what to say to that.
You can be in very... If you get the wrong person, you can get... If you get a woman who thinks you've told a joke that you haven't told and thinks... Say you're setting up an ironic joke, and I've seen male acts just being completely devastated because a woman's just got up and started shouting at them and won't listen because she's like a little bit drunk and absolutely outraged, and I believe the word is triggered. She will just rant, and if the club's not going to do anything and get her to sit down or chuck her out, that's your act ruined. That's 20 minutes of a woman shouting. I've seen that.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It must have bothered you, and you must become thick-skinned over time. It must have bothered you at some point, or...
Yeah. I think it probably still does bother me. So if they're right, it bothers me. So that whole thing of you're not funny, if I've been storming it, that's fine. If I'm not funny and they say you're not funny, I'm just like, yeah.
It's quite an easy defence mechanism, that, though, in some respects. I don't know, it just seems like Joe Brand does that, I think, doesn't she? Where she kind of just sort of...
I think she just used what people shouted at her as fuel. So when her opening, when she first started doing stand-up, her act was called The Sea Monster, and she'd walk on stage as the Sea Monster, and that was her stage name, The Sea Monster. And then she would do the thing of, I'll just move my mic stand so you can see me, and she would be very, very self-deprecating, but at the same time, it's not giving a fuck. Roseanne Barr does it very well. She doesn't do any of the self-deprecation, though. She just doesn't give a fuck. She takes that little step back and just goes, I am what I am, fuck you, before anybody's even dared to say anything. So there is that sort of, aggressive thing that... I don't tend to do that, though. I tend to quite enjoy being odd. So when people say, get your tits out, my natural reaction is to go, oh, do you like warts? And it basically, unless they're doing it, you can tell when people are saying things to be dicks, and you can tell when people are saying things because they've got it wrong, and you can tell when people are saying things because they're actually being really funny. And you just have to be out of your own head enough
to realise it.
Yeah, to just read it, because all it is a conversation. And however, even if it is a monologue and it's very one-sided, it is a conversation. You're chatting an entire room up. It's why I reckon a lot of women like going to see stand-up comedy. Is because, in a similar way that men like going to strip clubs because they like naked women love being chatted up. It's one of our things that, we like.
It's a hobby.
Well, it's a nice... It's what we like. Is what we find attractive in people, slightly more than what men typically find attractive in people, is we do like their ideas and their brain and their character. Yeah. And stand-up is a great way of demonstrating your character. And it's unusual when you see a man sort of go on stage and go, I'm a big old coward. or I'm socially awkward in this situation.
And you wouldn't get that at a rugby match or any other sort of form of...
I mean, if you get your chested up at a rugby match, well done. But that is where I would take a woman, says Rodri, to a rugby match and chat her up. But there is that sort of thing where it's quite... There's a level of openness which is revealing, which is interesting. I believe more interesting to women than it is to men. And that is why I think you get quite a lot of female fans of young male comics.
And that was Iszi Lawrence. If we've learnt one thing from this interview, don't heckle her. It's just not worth it. You'll never survive. She's also trained in jiu-jitsu as well. Remember that. And we do talk about that in part 2 of the interview, which I will air or upload, to use a more modern term, on a later edition of the podcast. Now, before you delete this episode to make room for another great podcast, such as the Binman's Binman podcast, in which a binman interviews other bin men and women about the world, lives and minds of bin people, or bin men, I'm going to tell you about some upcoming events. The next show at the Stand and Deliver Comedy Club, up above Smoking Billy's Rib House in Reading, will be on Thursday the 8th of February. Our headliner is Paul Perry, one of the circuit's top comics. His career has spanned TV, film and radio, and he's absolutely excellent. I'm very excited to have him down at my club. And the night will be hosted by Nick Ellery. He is an Australian comic based in London at the moment, and I saw him MC the New Comedian of the Year competition at the Museum of Comedy in London last year, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to book him. He'll do a fab job at my comedy night, so I got in touch with him the very next day. And supporting, we have William Stone, who's winning awards left, right and centre at the moment, Stephen Catlin, Honor Speck and Simon Weekers. It should be a great show. Tickets available now. Facebook.com/Stand and Deliver Comedy Night. Now, should you want to come and see me, Rhodders, do some of the old stand-up, here are some highlights from my gig diary over the next couple of weeks. On Saturday the 3rd of February, I'm at the Comedy Ladder in Tame at the Cross Keys. And then the Saturday after, which is the 10th of February, I'll be doing the Comedy Ladder in Stokenchurch at the Fleur de Lis. Don't worry, they don't all speak French in there. Then on the 13th of February, I'm in Bath. I'll be doing the Westgate Comedy Night at, you guessed it, the Westgate Pub. And then on the 5th of March, I'm in Stratford-Say for the Comedy Night at the Iron Duke. It's pretty much a variety night because they've got a number of comedians, a magician, and live music as well. It sounds like it's going to be great fun. More info at rodders.com/calendar, subject to change, and I might add some more dates as well. Why not? So that's it. I can't believe we've done it. We've actually done the first episode of the Stand and Deliver podcast in the bag, and I'm quite pleased with it, to be perfectly honest with you. It's nice just to get something off the ground. Thanks to our guest Izzi, and we'll see you all on the next episode. All the info you should need is over at rodders.com, RHODDERS.com. I've been Rhodders, and this has been the Stand and Deliver Comedy Podcast, Episode 1. Bye!